Hello and welcome to 7 Days of Science. In the headlines this week, prehistoric pygmy hippos in Cyprus are found to have been wiped out by ancient humans. A rock painting in South Africa might be a depiction of a 200 million year old extinct animal. A major study has reconstructed the Earth's temperature over the last 485 million years, and much, much more. Starting off the news this week, an interesting new discovery has been made about one of the strangest planets in our universe. WASP 107b sits about 212 light years away from us and is one of the least dense planets ever discovered. Types of planets that have this low level of density have been dubbed super puff planets, which is rather cute. This particular exoplanet, despite being just under double the mass of Neptune, is the size of Jupiter and is very close to its star, with an orbit that lasts just over 5.5 Earth days. A very strange planet indeed. Well, the James Webb Space Telescope has taken a peek and has found something else for astronomers to scratch their heads about. Webb's data shows evidence that the atmosphere of WASP 107b is asymmetrical. The eastern side of its atmosphere has different atmospheric characteristics than the western side of its atmosphere. If this can be confirmed, it will be a massive step in understanding the atmosphere of exoplanets, and so astronomers will be trying to focus on determining whether or not this planet does indeed have an asymmetrical atmosphere. There are already so many unanswered questions about this planet, like those surrounding its formation, stability, and position in its solar system. This is another one to add to the list, but hopefully one we can answer soon. In other news, scientists at the University of Southampton have stored the entire human genome on what they have dubbed an everlasting memory crystal, a fused quartz equivalent that can experience extreme temperatures, force, and can store an incredibly high amount of data. The 5D memory crystal is the most durable data storage material in the world, and the data was stored using 2 optical dimensions and 3 spatial coordinates, using incredibly precise lasers to encode the data, hence the 5D name. This data has been stored in the Memory of Mankind archive in Austria, a time capsule located in a salt cave that aims to physically preserve a large amount of human history that may be lost in the digital age. This particular piece of data, it is hoped, may well be the key to restarting humanity in the far future if we go extinct. If the data is recovered by a civilization with the advanced capabilities to synthetically create complex biology, like us, then it's possible that they could recreate humanity using the data provided in this crystal. Also in the recent news, a recently published paper may shed light on why the population of southern resident orcas has plateaued at around 75 individuals, whilst the population of northern resident orcas has steadily grown to more than 300 individuals. Both populations live in the coastal waters of Washington and British Columbia and are fish eaters, but the critically endangered southern resident orca pods spend more time in parts of the Salish Sea, which has high ship traffic. Research has shown that, for both the northern and southern resident orcas, underwater noise pollution from both large and small vessels forces the orcas to expend more time and energy hunting for fish, and also lowers the overall success of their hunting efforts. The paper reports that vessel noise negatively impacts every step in the orca's hunting behaviour, from searching to pursuing and finally capturing prey. Orcas use echolocation to hear and interpret information about their prey, and it was found that for every additional decibel increase in maximum noise levels around orcas, there was an increase in effort for both male and female orcas searching for prey, and a lower chance that both males and females captured prey. Vessel noise had a disproportionately negative impact on females, possibly due to their reluctance to leave vulnerable calves at the surface while pursuing prey for lengthy periods of time, only to end in failure, and the pressure for nursing females to conserve energy. It is possible possible that the impact of noise may contribute to nutritional stress among females. This is valuable research, and hopefully, using this information, some strategies can now be put in place to help protect these endangered orcas. Also in the news this week, archaeologists have discovered a 5,600-year-old stone bridge submerged in Genovesa Cave on Mallorca, the main island of the Balearic archipelago. The discovery suggests that humans settled the western Mediterranean much earlier than previously thought. Reconstructing early human occupation of this area is challenging due to limited archaeological evidence. By studying this 7.7 metre or 25-foot bridge, archaeologists are able to provide compelling evidence the island was occupied earlier than thought. Genovesa Cave presently has submerged passages flooded due to rising sea levels. During periods of high sea level, distinct calcite incrustations are formed, and these can act as proxies for precisely tracking historical sea level changes and for dating the bridge. Previous research suggested human occupation as far back as 9,000 years, but there were doubts about these findings caused by inconsistencies and poor preservation of the radiocarbon material. Newer studies used charcoal, ash and bones on the island to propose a new date of 4,400 years ago, but the authors, by using the overgrowths of minerals and the elevation of coloured bands on the bridge, proposed a 6,000-year-old date for the construction of the bridge. This pushes back the date of earliest occupation on the island by 2,000 years, narrowing the gap between eastern and western Mediterranean settlement. A fascinating study helping to piece together the puzzle of early human occupation in the Mediterranean. First up in the paleontology news for this week, an interesting dinosaur discovery has been made as a very rare flat-headed pachycephalosaur fossil is described. That was a mouthful. Pachycephalosaurs are well known for the species with dome heads, which were likely used in intraspecific combat displays. But this newly reported specimen from West Texas is a remarkably thin plate of bone from the roof of the skull, showing that it did not have a prominent dome. Flat-headed pachycephalosaur species are known from Asia, but in North America, the only species so far known are those that had domed heads as adults. The bone, called a frontal bone, most closely resembles those of Stegosaurus, but it still has many differences. This has led the paleontologist to suggest that the fossil represents an as yet unknown growth stage of Stegosaurus, and could be a new species within the genus, indicating that these pachycephalosaurs apparently delayed the development of the dome head until they were nearly fully grown. Whether this was a sexually dimorphic feature, perhaps only occurring in females, something that helped distinguish between species, or because harsh environments restricted the growth of such a feature, is unknown. But it's a very interesting discovery. Also in the news, a very interesting study has been published by the paleontologist Dr. Julien Benoit, whom Ben and Doug went on their trip to South Africa with a few years ago, suggesting that a rock painting in the South African Karoo actually depicts a kind of animal that's been extinct for at least 200 million years. The rock art, known as the horned serpent panel, was created by the indigenous San people of southern Africa a minimum of 200 years ago. One of the animals depicted in this artwork is a tusked creature that superficially looks a bit like a walrus. Given that walruses don't occur around southern Africa, the identity of this animal is rather intriguing. As Dr. Benoit explains, although it depicts a creature from the spirit realm of the San culture and therefore doesn't have to be realistic, most fantastical creatures in San rock art are inspired by real animals. So what could have inspired this one? The people who made this art lived in the Karoo semi-desert, an incredible place to find fossils of Permian and Triassic animals, including those of dicynodonts, herbivorous relatives of mammals that had downwards projecting tusks, which died out about 200 million years ago. Dr. Benoit therefore argues that the tusked mystery creature may have been inspired by the observation of dicynodont skulls weathering out of the nearby ground. The incredible condition of these fossils means that almost complete skulls with intact tusks can indeed be found just poking out of the rock, and other features such as the spots on the painting are reminiscent of the warty skin in mummified dicynodont specimens. If this is the case, then the painting was made at least a decade before the first scientific description of a dicynodont in 1845, and suggests that the San people were discovering the fossils of these animals and interpreting them long before Western scientists, a fascinating possible instance of indigenous paleontology. Up next in the recent news, a paper has investigated the effect that the arrival of humans in Cyprus had on the local megafauna, finding that these ancient people were responsible for the extinction of the Cypriot pygmy hippo as well as the Cyprus dwarf elephant. As the research explains, the impact of human dispersals on the extinction of megafauna around the world over the last few hundreds of thousands of years has been hotly debated, with some studies blaming environmental changes and others finding human overhunting to be almost entirely responsible. Newer studies have since recovered more nuanced results depending on the species and where they lived, and in some cases it was likely a combination of both driving forces. Cyprus is an ideal test case for determining the role of humans in megafaunal extinction. This is because it's a relatively small area and humans settled here quite late, between 14 to 13,000 years ago. Plus, only 2 species of megafauna are known to have lived here, the dwarf elephant and the pygmy hippo. The researchers therefore re-examined the dating of the fossils known of these species in Cyprus and when they disappeared from the island, in addition to creating models of their population dynamics over time and seeing what would happen with the introduction of humans. They discovered that the small human population of between 3,000 to 7,000 people could easily have driven the elephants and hippos to extinction in under 1,000 years, and the dates of the animals' disappearances line up perfectly with this predicted timing. So in the case of Cyprus, humans most certainly are to blame for the megafaunal extinctions, showing the powerful impact our species has had on the planet's ecosystem over many thousands of years. And now to make up for this tragic news, here are some images of Mu Deng, the modern pygmy hippo. We can't let these ones go extinct too. She's so gorgeous. I love her. Finally for the news this week is a very important study that has presented a new reconstruction of the Earth's surface temperature across the past 485 million years, with some surprising results. This comprehensive analysis has combined various different sets of climate models and temperature indicators to produce a more accurate estimate of the average surface temperatures of the entire planet through time. The reconstruction is called FANDA, standing for Phanerozoic Data Assimilation, the Phanerozoic being the current eon we're living in. FANDA is largely consistent with previous reconstructions of Earth's temperature, and shows the different cooler and warmer climates the planet has experienced as ice caps have formed, retreated and reappeared, causing the planet to enter greenhouse and then icehouse states. However, it also shows that Earth's temperature has varied more than previous models suggested, between 11 and 36 degrees Celsius. It also contrasts with previous studies that had found an overall long-term decline in temperatures in which older periods of greenhouse Earths were warmer than more recent ones. Instead, FANDA shows that the greenhouse periods were all in the same temperature ranges. It also shows that CO2 has been the dominant force in controlling climate variation across the Phanerozoic eon, with a strong correlation between atmospheric CO2 concentration and temperature. Though this was actually somewhat surprising, since on this timescale it was expected that the increase in the sun's luminosity over time would influence the climate, so it seems that other factors helped compensate for this. One of the other major findings was that there has been a very constant apparent Earth system sensitivity throughout time of about 8 degrees Celsius. This means that when CO2 concentration was doubled, the average surface temperature would eventually increase by about 8 degrees, whether it was a greenhouse or an icehouse world, due to feedback loops in the Earth system. So it's a very significant study that's found all sorts of interesting things about our planet's dynamic past and has many implications for its immediate future. Well, that's it for the news this week. I hope you enjoyed learning about everything that's happened in these last 7 days of science. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Benji Thomas if you'd like for more short form videos about science news and extinct animals. You can also follow me on Instagram at Miss Amelia Evans. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.